Place your snow measurement board on the ground where snow is not likely to drift. You can use some of the same tips you learned when placing your rain gauge, such as make sure there are no obstructions around, like trees or buildings, that would prohibit the snow from falling. A good general rule is to try to keep the board twice as far away as an obstruction is tall. If there is no such place in your measuring location, try to pick the most open area available. It's also a good idea to mark the location of your snow measurement board with a flag or reflector. Otherwise, it might be hard to find when it comes time to measure. Remove your funnel from the top of your rain gauge, as well as the inner measuring cylinder. This will allow snow to fall in the main cylinder so that you can later measure the amount of water that is in the melted snow. Now all we need is for it to snow. The day has come and snow has finally fallen. It's time to take your daily precipitation measurement. You may find, especially in cases where there was little or no wind, that some snow has accumulated on the edge of your gauge. To remedy this, take a flat surface and press it directly down towards the top of your gauge. Some volunteers like to use a highly advanced piece of scientific equipment for this task: a snow swatter. As you press down, some snow falls inside the gauge and some falls out. The snow needs to be melted to take a measurement, so take your gauge inside. Waiting for the snow to melt could take all day. We don't recommend the microwave, and even placing it by the heater would still take a long time. Instead, we're going to add a pre-measured amount of warm water. If you use your inner measuring cylinder, you can measure exactly how much you will put in. Make sure to write it down. Next, pour the warm water into your gauge and slosh it around until the snow melts. Once it's melted, put your funnel atop your inner measuring cylinder and pour in the contents of your gauge. Take a measurement and write it down. Now, simply subtract the warm water that you added from the measurement you just took, and you will have your daily precipitation measurement. Snowfall is the accumulation of snow and ice in the last 24 hours, prior to melting or settling. With this caveat, your normal observation time may not be ideal for measuring accumulation. Ideally, the best time to measure is right after the snow has fallen. For example, if a storm came through at 10 a.m. and lasted until 2 p.m., you would want to measure accumulation right after 2 p.m., before melting or settling occurred. This is not always feasible for volunteers who are working during the day or may not be home when the snow stops falling. This is okay too. If you are not at home when the snow stops falling, you can still measure the snowfall at your normal observation time. If you know what time the snow stopped falling, or if snow is falling while you are taking your measurement, please add this to your observation comments when entering the data. To measure accumulation, first find your snow measurement board, which should be easy since you remembered to mark its location with a flag or reflector. Slide your snow stick or ruler straight down into the snow towards your snow measurement board. Try to get down close to where the ruler meets the snow, because if you are looking at an angle, you will get an inaccurate measurement. Write down the measurement to the nearest tenth of an inch. You can also take multiple measurements in representative locations and calculate an average measurement. Before you clear your snow measurement board, you will want to take your measurement for the liquid water equivalent of snow, explained in the next section. After you have measured accumulation on your snow measurement board, you may want to measure the liquid water equivalent of new snow too. Even though you already measured the liquid amount that fell into your gauge, oftentimes the wind can alter what landed in your gauge and what fell on your board. Based on conditions, it may be obvious that the amount in your gauge was not representative of what fell on the ground. In windy conditions, if snow that fell on your snow measurement board is representative of snow that fell in your location, this may be the most valuable measurement of them all. It's important to take this measurement in an area that equals the depth of new snow that you already calculated. To do this, take the outer cylinder of your rain gauge and with the open end facing the ground, press it down towards your snow measurement board. Clear the snow around the gauge. Take a flat surface and slide it in between your snow measurement board and gauge. A spatula works well for this, or your highly advanced scientific snow swatter. To capture your snow core, raise the cylinder and flat surface straight up simultaneously and flip the gauge back upright. Clear the snow measurement board and place it on top of the new snow so that you are ready for your next observation time. Remember to mark it with a flag or reflector so you can find it later. take your snow core inside, melt and measure. You can use the same process to melt the snow that you used when measuring daily precipitation. Remember to write down the warm water you add so you can subtract it later. Because snow rarely falls uniformly on the ground, take several measurements and average them to find your total depth measurement. Don't measure artificial accumulation spots, such as plowed piles, large drifts, or shoveled snow. If parts of the ground are bare, you should use them as measurements to put into your average. For example, let's say half of the ground is bare, and the other half, after taking multiple measurements, averages out to 2 inches. Your total depth measurement would average out to 1 inch. If more than half of the ground is bare, report T for trace of snow. Since this measurement is taken during your normal time of observation, typically around 7 a.m., if possible, please report your total depth of snow every day that there is snow on the ground, even if you didn't receive any new snow. When taking these measurements, you may find that you have to take multiple measurements in representative locations that aren't on your snow measurement board. To take an accurate measurement, make sure that you are measuring on a hard surface. Even though your yard may be hard, measuring where there is grass will most often offset your measurement because the grass creates a gap between the snow and the ground that can increase your measurement, sometimes by inches. Some volunteers have solved this by using 2 snow measurement boards. One gets put on the top of the snow after every daily measurement, and the other stays buried, so there is always a hard surface to take measurements on. Just remember, when you are measuring snow depth, to use a board or hard surface. Don't measure inside your gauge. It doesn't happen often, but sometimes you may find that ice has formed in and around your gauge. How do you measure daily precipitation? First, bring your ice-glazed rain gauge inside, where you can then measure the liquid amount once it thaws. Remember, you're just measuring what fell inside the gauge, not outside, so make sure to wipe the excess moisture off with a dry towel before you measure. Record your measurement in the daily precipitation section of the report form. Sometimes you will find that the snow is filling to the top of the gauge and spilling out. If you are around when the gauge starts filling up, either take an early sample and put the gauge out to keep collecting without spilling over, or compact the snow inside the cylinder to make more room for accumulation. Your inner measuring cylinder works good for this. If you aren't around when the gauge overflows and you suspect that some water may have been missed, go ahead and take a core sample for your measurement. Ice covering objects is also called a glaze. It can be measured on a flat surface with a ruler, preferably with increments of tenths of an inch. You can also measure ice accretion on branches. Just make sure to measure the radius of the ice, not the whole diameter. Because ice rarely accumulates uniformly, it's helpful to take multiple measurements and calculate an average. If it is less than a tenth of an inch, report trace. But where to report it, you may ask? Since there is no designated field on the report form for this measurement, report it in your observation notes. You can still report daily precipitation by bringing your ice-glazed rain gauge inside, where you can then measure the liquid amount once it thaws. Remember, you're just measuring what fell inside the gauge, not outside, so make sure to wipe the excess moisture off with a dry towel before you measure. When you go to record your measurement on the report form, remember that freezing rain is not reported as snowfall, but is simply reported as a daily precipitation amount with 0 recorded for the snowfall. However, if there is any snow or sleet mixed in, then the depth of any accumulation of snow and/or sleet is measured and reported as snowfall. The depth of ice from freezing rain is not reported as depth of snowfall, but it does contribute to the measurement depth of snow on ground.